everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom DeAmber. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. My friends, we're going to have to get right at it because we have a tremendous amount of information to go over with you. I have discovered some very startling information about some of the people with regards to Dr. Blasey Ford's family. I know we covered some of that last week, but we're going to get into it in more depth this week. And I got to tell you, when I was doing this research, there was a couple of names that made me literally say no way. But before we get into that, I wanted to get into this with you real quick. I was going to get into the flu shot, by the way. The CDC is now saying that they estimate that the flu shot that they're mandating everybody get. If you're in the health services, you're being mandated to get it. Besides all these toxins they put in it, now the CDC last week came out and said they expect a 10% efficiency rating, which is a little better. Where last year they actually issued an apology before the flu shot came out because they knew it was not going to be effective at all. But yet, hospitals like MVRH here in St. Johnsbury mandated their employees take these toxins. Oh, and by the way, sign a waiver making no liability placed on any potential harm on the MVRH itself. Okay, so now, what about these big pharmaceutical companies? How much money does Big Pharma spend on sales and marketing versus research and development? If you can see this graph, folks, it's really simple. The orange, if you would, is sales and marketing, and the blue is research and development. So Johnson & Johnson, obviously 17.5% to sales and marketing, 8.2% to research. Novartis, 14.6 as compared to 9.9. Pfizer, 11.4 in sales and marketing as compared to 6.6 for research and development. GSK, which is 9.9 as compared to 5.3 for research and development. Merck, 9.5 in sales and marketing, 7.5 in research and development. Sanofi is 9.1 as compared to 6.3 for research and development. Roche is 9 as compared to 9.3 for research and development, which is the only one here, folks, where they actually spend more money on research and development. AZ is 7.3 to 4.3. Lilly is 5.7 to 5.5. And then we have AbbVie, which is 4.3 to 2.9. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable, folks, that out of all these companies, all these toxins that we put in our bodies, these companies are spending more money on sales and marketing to convince you they're okay for you and they're actually going to be beneficial to you than they are in actual research and development. Okay, I'm going to stop there on this because we are low on time, my friends. Some quick quotes. I know if you've been watching this program, but I have got to hit these home so you understand what these manipulators are using to manipulate us. Okay, this is Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister. Propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident that they are acting on their own free will. Think of that one. Adolf Hitler, make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Who's they? That's you and I, my friends. All right, let us continue. This is Mr. Huxley. By means of ever more effective methods of mind manipulation, the democracies will change their nature. The quaint old forms, elections, parliaments, Supreme Courts, and all the rest will remain. The underlying substance will be a new kind of totalitarianism. All the traditional names, all the hallowed slogans will remain exactly as they were in the good old days. Democracy and freedom will be the theme of every broadcast and editorial. Meanwhile, the ruling oligarchy and its highly trained elite of soldiers, policemen, thought manufacturers, and mind manipulators will quietly run the show as they see fit. And understand, my friends, it is a show. All right, let us continue. This is Bertrand Russell, the father of the current American public education system. Men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are made stupid by education, at a very costly education. Oh, and by the way, residents of Vermont, just so you make sure that Monday you've got to go pay your extortion fee or they're going to come take what property you think is yours. All right, let us continue. John Swinton. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks, they pull the strings, and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. Who is the we? The we at this point, my friends, I know this says 1880. This is actually 1924 when Mr. Swinton retired as editor of a very prevalent New York newspaper, and he sums it up very quite well. We are intellectual prostitutes. Who is we? It is the media. He is at his retirement gala speaking to the hierarchy of the American media in 1924. Let us continue. Mr. Goebbels, if you tell a lie enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. And of course, what are the main tools that they use for all these lies? Well, they lay them out right there for you. New York Times, CNN, BBC, Fox News, ABC, NBC, etc., etc., etc. And let us not forget, of course, the public fool system, you know, is the public school system, along with the 501c3 IRS churches. All right. Again, let us continue. It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. That is Samuel Clemens. You know him as Mark Twain. Okay. The look that you give when you are lying at a congressional hearing. So why did we bring that up? Well, my friends, we are about to show a documentary to you done by a woman who, I didn't believe all the science behind this, and the more I research the science behind body language, I am very convinced that it is something of fact and not just something of a premise. So anyway, we are going to show a documentary to you that was put out by, actually two. One is on Ms. Blasey Ford, and the other one is on a short one on Miss Dianne Feinstein. This woman does a remarkable job of literally reading the body language of these two very important people in these past Supreme Court hearings for Mr. Kavanaugh. So, Bill, if we could, let us please roll them two documentaries, and we will comment and get back to you on the return.
We will hear from two witnesses, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and Judge Kavanaugh. Thanks, of course, to Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh for accepting our committee's invitation to testify, and also thank them for their volunteering to testify before we even invited. Both Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh have been through a terrible...
She's sitting up very straight. She's taking hard swallows, and she keeps scanning the room quickly. She's got her head held high. So it contradicts the scanning and the nervous look, which should tell you at that point that it's an act.
Every step of the way, the Democratic side refused to participate in what should have been a bipartisan investigation. And as far as I know, on all of our judgeships throughout at least the last 4 years or 3 years, that's been the way it's been handled. After Dr. Ford's identity became public,
I keep seeing her do it. She keeps opening her mouth and closing it, opening her mouth and closing it. When I see that, I instantly think something's wrong mentally. There's something neurologically wrong with her. What it is or how bad it is, I have no idea. I can just tell you, when I see that from someone, I mentally think there's something wrong with you, because that's not normal behavior, especially since it's coming off subconsciously.
My staff contacted all the individuals she said attended the 1982 party described in the Washington Post article. Judge Kavanaugh immediately submitted to an interview under penalty of felony for any knowingly false statements. He denied the allegations categorically. Democratic staff was invited to participate and could have asked any questions they wanted to, but they declined, which leads me then to wonder, if they're really concerned with going to the truth, why wouldn't you want to talk to the accused? The process and procedure is what the committee always does when we receive allegations of wrongdoing. My staff reached out to other individuals allegedly at the party: Mark Judge, Patrick Smith, Leland Kaiser. All three submitted statements to the Senate under penalty of felony, denying any knowledge of the events described by Dr. Ford. Dr. Ford's lifelong friend, Ms. Kaiser, stated she doesn't know Judge Kavanaugh and doesn't recall ever attending a party with him. My staff made repeated requests to interview Dr. Ford during the past 11 days, even volunteering to fly to California to take her testimony. But her attorneys refused to present her allegations to Congress. I nevertheless honored her request for a public hearing. So
he's reading the statement out, and he talks about the other people writing statements, and then her best friend writing a statement, lifelong friend, says it never happened. And she gives a nod and a positive and continues to go. And then he brings up the attorneys, flying her, getting this, so it was a formal way of doing things, someone to interview her. And she just looks over there. Nothing surprising, nothing, oh, I didn't know that. And this is important for later because I already watched this whole hearing. Because at the very end, and we're going to skip to that.
Did anybody ever advise you from Senator Feinstein's office or from Representative Eshu's office to go get a forensic interview?
No.
So should we see her there? She thinks, goes through
No.
memory. No.
Instead, you were advised to get an attorney.
And she's going stiff because the rest of this time at this supposed hearing, she's got pretty pose. We'll go over pretty pose, or at least pretty pose in this later.
And take a polygraph. Is that right?
Many people advised me to get an attorney.
There's pretty pose. Head down, wrap the eyebrows, do a little wave.
Once I had an attorney, my attorney and I discussed using the polygraph.
And then we're twisting our chair because we're cute.
And instead of submitting to an interview in California, we're having a hearing here today in 5-minute increments. Is that right?
So she looked towards the committee for that question, which tells me that answer, the true answer, came from that her attorneys weren't involved in that the true power behind where to have this at was from one of the committee members.
I agree that's what was agreed upon by the collegial group here.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, I have something to submit for the
And that made her extremely nervous, comparatively speaking, on the rest of her testimony. Because now she's gone back with her chin tucked into her neck because she knows that's bad.
record. We received 3 statements under penalty of felony from 3 witnesses identified
And now she's gone in defiant. I'm going to sit up straight, head held high, throw my glasses on top of my head.
by Dr. Ford, Mark Judge, Leland Kaiser, and Patrick Smith. All 3 denied any knowledge of the incident or gathering described by Dr. Ford. Without objection, I'll enter in the record.
And then more pretty pose with a defiance.
Mr. Chairman, I have something for the record as well. A number of letters from the witness's family, friends, including her husband.
Okay. I'll get to you just as soon as the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman,
I know it softens with other letters coming up that support her. My point is she's using emotion to manipulate her testimony. Pretty pose to this more defiant look. So we see in the beginning, we're going to look real small, give a little bit of I'm listening. Yeah, it's real hard. And then we see that by the end of it, the real comes out when these things are brought back up again, the letters. And it's more defiance and stress.
Proceed, please.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I think after I read my opening statement, I anticipate needing some caffeine, if that is available.
Okay. Can you pull the
We're going to sway back and forth. We're going to have a smaller voice than what is normal. We're going to make ourselves small, and we're doing the little pretty, it's cuteness. That's what it is, it's cuteness. I'm doing pretty pose. I'm going to use emotion to make you sympathize with me. I'm not coming off as a big scary bear or a Medusa. I'm a soft little church mouse telling you about the evil kitty outside.
I was pushed from behind into a bedroom across from the bathroom. I couldn't see who pushed me. Brett and Mark came into the bedroom and locked the door behind them. There was music playing in the bedroom. It was turned up louder by either Brett or Mark once we were in the room. I was pushed onto the bed, and Brett got on top of me. He began running his hands over my body and grinding into me. I yelled, hoping that someone downstairs might hear me, and I tried to get away from him, but his weight was heavy. Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life. It was hard for me to breathe.
Well, I'm listening to this, and she's putting her neck down into her chest so that she sounds like this, and it comes out real croaky. This is a prepared speech that later she tells you she wrote herself. No one helped her. So she's gone over this, reread it, practiced, and has really figured out how to sound kind of croaky so that it sounds like there's mucus there. And that's practice. Because if there was any mucus there, for as long as she's going on, and for as traumatic as she says this is, we should not only, one, hear it, but she should be lifting her head up to fight it from coming out. And we do not see that. We see a position that she's forcing her voice to sound as if she does, with no evidence of it. This is a manipulation tactic.
And I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. Both Brett and Mark were drunkenly laughing during the attack. They seemed to be having a very good time. Mark seemed ambivalent, at times urging Brett on, and at times telling him to stop. A couple of times I made eye contact with Mark and thought he might try to help me, but he did not. During this assault, Mark came over and jumped on the bed twice while Brett was on top of me. And the last time that he did this, we toppled over and Brett was no longer on top of me. I was able to get up and run out of the room. Directly across from the bedroom was a small bathroom. I ran inside the bathroom and locked the door. I waited until I heard Brett and Mark leave the bedroom, laughing, and loudly walk down the narrow stairway, pinballing off the walls on the way down. I waited, and when I did not hear them come back up the stairs, I left the bathroom, went down the same stairwell, through the living room, and left the house. I remember being on the street and feeling an enormous sense of relief that I had escaped that house and that Brett and Mark were not coming outside after me. Brett's assault on me drastically altered my life. For a very long time, I was too afraid and ashamed.
By the way, later in the same testimony, she testifies that her friend Leland gave her a ride home.
To tell anyone these details. I did not want to tell my parents that I, at age 15, was in a house without any parents present, drinking beer with boys. I convinced myself that because Brett did not rape me, I should just move on and just pretend that it didn't happen. Over the years, I told very, very few friends that I had this traumatic experience. I told my husband before we were married that I had experienced a sexual assault. I had never told the details to anyone, the specific details, until May 2012 during a couples counseling session. The reason this came up in counseling is that my husband and I had completed a very extensive, very long remodel of our home, and I insisted on a second front door, an idea that he and others disagreed with and could not understand. In explaining why I wanted a second front door, I began to describe the assault in detail. I recall saying that the boy who assaulted me could someday be on the U.S. Supreme Court and spoke a bit about his background at an elitist all-boys school in Bethesda, Maryland. My husband recalls that I named my attacker as Brett Kavanaugh. After that May 2012 therapy session, I did my best to ignore the memories.
If that's true, and it's hard to tell from this, but she's just acting and she's reading what she's practiced, because the allegations themselves don't hold water, because she gives herself away later and throughout. Psychologically, it would be very interesting to see what kind of person this individual is on a normal basis and not just this. She is a psychotherapist and apparently does psych research. I find it very alarming that when it comes to this kind of thing, she claims that she doesn't know about victims and memories and the best way to get information from them, nor does she know about polygraphs and the psychology behind that. That is her profession. Well, we are not going to watch this whole thing because this is like nails on a chalkboard. There's only so much of BS I want to watch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I use my 5 minutes of questioning, I thought that I'd try to remind my colleagues, and in this case, Ms. Mitchell as well, that
Now, she just got over her traumatic reading where she was talking and it was coming out really croak-like, and she's got a lot of mucus and she's so upset. So after you get through that, if you've got that much mucus in you, where is the tissue? It's just more evidence that that whole it was so traumatizing and I needed was a bunch of hooey.
you have my 5 minutes to ask questions.
I already know it. You guys don't like this woman because she didn't go in pit bull. Come on, she's a prosecutor. We're not going to watch this whole thing, but I'm going to point out some things that she was doing, and then we're going to go directly to the end where that little bit of pit bull came out. Because if you're ever going to get anyone out of someone that you believe is lying, well, you first have to make them relax. And this lady did a very good job at that. She let her hang herself, gave her all the rope she needed. And that was what her job was. Give her all the rope she needed.
Morning, Dr. Ford.
Hi.
We haven't met. My name is Rachel Mitchell.
Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to tell
Now she's gated, and I'm talking about the prosecutor. She's anchored herself down. She's given a reassuring smile. She's done this before, obviously. That's why they picked her.
you the first thing that struck me from your statement this morning was that you were terrified. And I just wanted to let you know I'm very sorry.
And she did a jerk on that one. It's like you're terrified, and then she jerked back, and then her head like wobbled. It is an unnatural thing for her to do or say. That's sympathy to someone that you're not believing. But alas, she's very good at her job. And even though you guys don't like her because she didn't bark at them with her teeth bared, sometimes there is such a thing as licking someone to death.
That's not right.
And we saw the stress smile.
I know this is stressful, and so I would like to set forth some guidelines that maybe will alleviate that a little bit. If I ask you a question that you don't understand, please ask me to clarify it or ask it in a different way. When I ask questions, sometimes I'll refer back to other information you've provided. If I do that and I get it wrong, please correct me.
Okay.
And you see how she's relaxed? Miss Ford is very relaxed because our prosecutor has done her job.
Was it written
seemed-
on or about that date?
Yes, yes. I traveled, I think, the 26th of July to Rehoboth, Delaware. So that makes sense because I wrote it from there.
Okay. Is the letter accurate?
I'll take a minute to read
Okay.
it. So I can read fast.
And there comes Pretty Pose again. I'll take a minute to read it and swing back and forth, wiggle in the chair, because we're being cute. It's Pretty Pose.
I see. And do you have that second front door?
Yes,
You prevailed.
and
Yes.
it now is a place to hope.
It's Pretty Pose again. We're talking about claustrophobia and a second front door. Pretty Pose. You see this a lot from her throughout this thing. Oh, we're not going over every detail. Nails on a chalkboard.
The attack itself, you are very clear about the attack. Being pushed into the room, you say you don't know quite by whom, but that it was Brett Kavanaugh that covered your mouth to prevent you from screaming, and then you escaped. How are you so sure that it was he?
The same way that I'm sure that I'm talking to you right now. It's just basic memory functions.
A little bit of the pretty pose, the cuteness. What is cuteness? What is the pretty pose? For her, is to distract what's coming out of the mouth. I'm cute and I'm pretty, therefore believe what is coming out of me. It's a manipulation technique. It's almost like hypnotizing. You're using your attractiveness and your smallness. It's like a little kid. Adults biologically want to protect and believe little kids when they're saying something very heinous. So if you act like a little kid and give those cute little pretty poses, you're more or less going to be able to bypass someone's normal radar of bull and have your story believed. That's just how it works. It sucks that way, but yeah, that's how it works.
Was there any other music or television or anything like that that
Because I was watching her eyeballs. Because so far I haven't seen anything go to any kind of visual memory. She uses a lot of emotion, and that's about it, which in and of itself is not good. I expect if you have a memory, even if it's just a little one, there's got to be visual memory. And there's nothing. So she starts at one side of her eye, and then she goes over to construction. That lightly touches visual memory. And you get it in that area of the brain, it means you're pulling visual memories of things you know, not actually of the scene that you're being asked to paint. If I ask you to tell me what your bedroom looks like, and you have a construction area when you're telling me about it, and it's your bedroom, I would be very suspicious that you're describing actually your bedroom. One thing in any trauma victim, regardless of anything, you're going to remember the scene of the crime. You may not remember anything else. You may not remember how you got there. You may not remember how many perpetrators were in the room, except for the ones that are physically doing something to you. But you're going to remember that room. You're going to remember the covers. You're going to remember the blankets. You're going to remember color. That would be normal. To remember nothing but the bed was over here, that's telling. And she's claiming she only had one beer. Of course, the others are claiming there was no such party.
So then would it be fair to say at least PJ, Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, Leland Ingram?
And she did it again. She's asked specifically on people, and she goes to an area of your brain that has nothing to do with the memories. It was actually like the doing part, like, oh yeah, what did I write down? That's who it is.
The time and yourself were present and possibly others.
And one other boy, so there were four.
So that really bothers me. You're supposedly giving out information of the people there, and you don't have any visual memory of them. You have the doing part come out of your brain. And the only thing I can ascribe that to is where she wrote them down in her little testimony paper, whatever she wrote it down in. But don't pay attention to that. She's got pretty pose. She's cute. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
4 boys. I just don't know the name of the other boy. So.
Have you been contacted by anybody saying, hey, I was at that party too?
No, I haven't talked with anyone from that party.
Okay.
She had just an access brain moment. It was too close to doing to be at anything else. That kind of makes me think that they're actively looking for others to corroborate. And if you can't find anybody to corroborate it, it doesn't help.
The 3 of you were inside that room, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, do you recall it being turned down?
I don't remember if it was turned down once I was leaving the house. I don't remember.
Okay.
Likely, since I could hear them walking down the stairs very clearly from the bathroom.
Okay. And the bathroom door was closed when you heard this, is that correct?
I could hear them very clearly hitting the walls, going down the stairwell.
In fact, in your letter, you said that they went down the stairs and they were talking with other people in the house.
Correct.
Were you able to hear that conversation?
I was not able to hear that conversation, but I was aware that they were downstairs and that I would have to walk past them to get out of the house.
Okay. Now, let me make sure we're on the same page. Were you not able to hear the conversation or not able to understand the conversation?
I couldn't hear the conversation. I was upstairs.
Okay. How do you know there was a conversation?
I'm just assuming since it was a social gathering, people were talking. I don't know.
Okay. In your letter,
I could hear them talking as they went down the stairwell. They were laughing and.
Okay. In your letter, you wrote, both loudly stumbled down the stairwell, at which point other persons at the house were talking with them. Does that ring a bell?
See, she is a good prosecutor. She's given her enough rope. Calm down, people.
I would describe it as somewhere between my house and the country club, in that vicinity that's shown in your picture.
Okay.
And the country club is about a 20-minute drive from my parents' home.
A 20-minute drive, and of course, I've marked as the crow flies.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that somebody drove you somewhere, either to the party or home from the party?
Correct.
Okay. Has anyone come forward to say
She had no memory on that.
to you, hey, remember, I was the one that drove you home?
No.
Okay. In your July 6 text to the Washington Post that you looked at earlier, you said that this happened in the mid-'80s. In your letter to Senator Feinstein, you said it occurred in the early '80s. In your polygraph statement, you said it was high school summer in '80s, and you actually had written in, and this is one of the corrections I referred to early, and then you crossed that out. Later in your interview with the Washington Post, you were more specific. You believed it occurred in the summer of 1982, and you said the end of your sophomore year.
Yes.
You said the same thing, I believe, in your prepared statement. How were you able to narrow down the time frame?
I can't give the exact date, and I would like to be more helpful about the date. And if I knew when Mark Judge worked at the Potomac Safeway, then I would be able to be more helpful in that way. So I'm just using memories of when I got my driver's license. I was 15 at the time, and I did not drive home from that party or to that party.
Like I said, I'm using memories, but she doesn't go to memories when she says, I got a ride. Not even the quick to it. Nothing. There's no memory. Let's continue.
In your statement, you said that on July 6th, you had a, quote, sense of urgency to relay the information to the Senate and the President. Did you contact either the Senate or the President on or before July 6th?
No, I did not. I did not know how to do that.
Okay.
There's pretty pose again. And then she looks away. I didn't know how to do that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It tells me that that's not true. And if it is true, she didn't even bother finding out.
Are you aware that, and you know, I've been really impressed today because you've talked about norepinephrine and cortisol and what we call in the profession, basically the neurobiological effects of trauma. Have you also educated yourself on the best way to get to memory and truth in terms of interviewing victims of trauma?
For me, interviewing victims of trauma?
No, the best way to do it, the best practices for interviewing victims of trauma.
She's got a doing memory.
No.
And she says no. She knows. It'd be weird if she didn't know, considering her profession. I'm so done with this woman. You know what it looks like through all of this? This looks like a professor got together with some of her liberal friends to take down Kavanaugh. Oh, you went to school with him. You said you were sexually assaulted. Yeah. How do I say this without getting caught in perjury? And you just let the pieces fall where they may. Because she didn't say anything in this that could perjure herself. Because she kept saying, I'm not sure. I don't remember. All I can tell you is where the bed was. No visual memory of anything. Nothing. If you liked it, leave a like.
If you like the content, please subscribe using this link via specific feed.
Mr. Chairman, let me be clear. I did not hide Dr. Ford's allegations. I did not leak her story. She asked me to hold it confidential.
Okay, Feinstein has said two statements, and neither one of them match. The other part of this, she's written it down. I don't know if she wrote it down during this hearing. It wouldn't surprise me. But it's suspicious to write it down. Now, what did she say? I did not hide it, and I did not leak it. So if you didn't hide it, it means others knew, which kind of contradicts I did not leak it. It's a very ambiguous statement, especially since she went so far as to actually write it down. So she stayed on point, just like lawyers speak.
And I kept it confidential as she asked. She apparently was stalked by the press, felt that what happened, she was forced to come forward, and her greatest fear was realized. She's been harassed, she's had death threats, and she's had to flee her home. In addition, the investigation that the Republican majority is heralding is really nothing that I know about, other than a partisan practice. Normally, all the witnesses would be interviewed. However, that's not happened. While the majority has reached out to several people, they did not notify me or my staff that they were doing this. And so to argue that we would not participate, but not tell us what they were up to, is somewhat disingenuous. I was given some information by a woman who was very much afraid, who asked that it be held confidential, and I held it confidential until she did.
Now, the part there that makes me suspicious is she keeps going down in her eye contact. She's not even actually looking up towards anyone of any status, at least in her mind. I did not leak. There's quite a few ways, especially since we're dealing with lawyers and they're getting smarter, that you can approach this. I did not leak could mean she did not give anyone that letter. Because that part, as she says it, seems to be true. Her body sings with her. Everything's peaches and cream. And alas, you followed your little law. But you know, whispered bullet points, whispered names, that's not leaking, at least in their mind.
Decided that she would come forward.
Mr. Chairman, would the ranking member answer a question, please?
If I can.
I have great respect for Senator Feinstein. We've worked together on many topics, and I believe what you just said. Can you tell us that your staff did not leak it?
Oh, I don't believe my staff would leak it. I have not asked that question directly, but I do not believe
do you know
they
that?
would.
I mean, how in the
That was interesting. Now, I'm not looking at Feinstein. I'm looking at the woman behind her, and there's two of them. And I wish I could see the reaction of the bald one. But confronted on if your staff leaked it. See how her head goes back? Almost like a defiance. And then she watches Feinstein to see her reaction. Are you going to stand up for us? It makes me suspicious that the staff was the ones that were leaking it. Whether they actually leaked the document or, like I said before, use those bullet points. Because the woman that we see in this frame is not the one who says, you asked me before. It's another lady that says, no, we didn't leak it.
Directly, but I do not believe
do you know
they
that?
would.
I mean, how in the world could that get in the hands of the press?
The answer
unless the
is
people-
no.
We also see that her lips are getting tighter, and we're talking about the long-haired woman in the back. So she says no. The long-haired woman in the back now starts completely looking at the other senator. I don't have to focus too much on Diane.
The staff
Have you
said they
asked
did not.
have you asked your staff or other
I
staff
just
members
did.
on the Judiciary Committee?
And of course, you see her back there shaking with her head in the positive. I just did. So yes, it does make me suspicious on the staff. And as if you know anything about if you're in a criminal organization and you're trying to keep your hands as clean as possible, your minions do your dirty work. And your minions, if they're smart, will do the dirty work in a way that gives them plausible deniability.
Pardon me? Well, Jennifer reminds me I've asked her before.
The long-haired lady is becoming very uncomfortable. It is suspicious as far as the staff goes. And I do believe Feinstein knows because she keeps looking down and she's becoming more jerky and more nervous as this questioning continues. Are you sure your staff didn't do it? You watch.
Well, Jennifer
And then the stuttering.
reminds me I've asked her before about
And she didn't look at him while she said it.
it.
Well,
And that's true.
And she's getting smaller. The whole pretty pose is starting to come out.
Well, somebody leaked it if it wasn't.
Yeah, nervous. She knows. I would assume at this point with that much going on, she knows it was leaked. She knows who did it. And it's plausible deniability. Nobody technically leaked it. And just for a contrast for her body language, talking about Feinstein, this woman can be extremely domineering. The act that she puts on while she's on the committee is a farce. Whenever you see someone with a pretty pose, understand that there is a contrast to that personality they're presenting to you. And it looks something like this. I'm going to block your way with my arm. I'm going to look down on you even though you are taller than me, which, because the woman in the flower, Murdowski, is a weak-minded individual, she's actually starting to slouch down so that she can be in the downward eye position of Feinstein. She's closing her eyes because she does not want to look at the domineering personality in front of her. If you liked it, leave a...
Okay, folks, very interesting, isn't it? I found that to be very fascinating. And like I said, the more research that I did on the science of reading body language, I am very impressed by it, and I plan on doing some personal research on this to know. I always have a clue when people are lying to me or fabricating or withholding truth, but I find this to be very, very interesting. So, research that continues on Miss Blasey Ford's. We spoke to you how all of her family, her grandfather, her father, her brother, and her brother-in-law were all linked to the CIA and all law firms that created Fusion GPS, and they were involved with many other detrimental things to our country. But doing more research, my friends, I found something fascinating. Bill, if we could we blow that up so maybe the folks at home can see? Thank you, my friend. I want to, as I'm reading this article, James Ingleton is the gentleman who's seated, and Nicholas Deek is the gentleman who is standing. And this photo comes from the New York Times back in 1977. This was actually a reunion of the old OSS, which was the forerunner to the CIA. So, let's get into some more interest. Let's go a little bit deeper into Miss Blasey Ford's family. Here we go. Because don't forget, she was just a scared little girl who couldn't fly and all the rest of it. Just a scared little girl. Really. Okay, here we go. Now, this is a very intriguing report put out by the Foreign Intelligence Service. In America, we call it the SVR, Sierra Victor Romeo. And what it is, my friends, it is the foreign service of the Russian government. That's who the SVR is. Anyway, listen to this report circulating. This came right out of the Foreign Intelligence Service in Russia. States that a Stanford University psychiatric professor named Dr. Christine Blasey has become the latest centerpiece of the Central Intelligence Agency, plot to harm President Trump in her last-minute allegation just prior to the U.S. Senate confirmation that Supreme Court. Let me back up. I'm going to have to. I don't have all the time to get into some of these other things, and I apologize. Let me back up here. Okay. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh had attempted to sexually assault her over 30 years ago, 36, when they were teenage school children, while being kept from the American people about Dr. Blasey is that she currently oversees the CIA undergraduate internship program at Stanford University developed by the notorious CIA-connected Stanford University psychiatric professor Dr. Friedrich T. Melges. The G, I always pronounced it hard. I found out the G was actually silent. Who himself in 1985, this is when this name came up, folks, I literally almost jumped out of my chair, who took into his care the homeless woman, Lois Lang, who assassinated CIA paymaster Nick Deek. Okay? Now, Nicholas Deek, in the picture you're seeing, is the man standing. And that afterwards saw the CIA's black operation monies being controlled by Ralph G. Blasey Jr., who, not so mysteriously, just happens to be the father of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. She married into the name Ford. Okay. According to this report, with Donald Trump being warned just prior to his assuming the presidency by the powerful party, Democratic Party, U.S. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Remember when he says the U.S. intelligence services have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you? Well, this is part of it, my friends. This past nearly 2 years has shown just how precedent this warning was, and whose latest strike back against Trump is coming courtesy of a rogue CIA faction. This is the CVR's report, friends. I'm reading this verbatim. A rogue CIA faction who have just trotted out for public display Dr. Christine Blasey Ford again, she named into the name Ford, who claims that as a young school teenager, Brett Kavanaugh, also a high school teenager, tried to sexually assault her, but whose evidence for this being true shows that Dr. Blasey was unable to name the exact year it happened, her not remembering where the accident took place, or how she got home, her not being able to remember key details of the incident, and her not remembering how the gathering came together the night of the incident, and her not telling anyone else about this at that time. And let's not forget, folks, that all of her witnesses said, no, sorry, didn't happen. But should be expected to be the case from an unproven, salacious allegation of this sort, as it comes from a woman supporting the Democratic Party and who also hates Donald Trump. That's why they took all her social media down, my friends, okay? As the deep state aligned the U.S. mainstream media propaganda began flooding the airways, newspapers with internet with Dr. Blasey claims against Judge Kavanaugh, that they have absolutely no proof or evidence behind anyone who could ever investigate, this report continues. SVR intelligence analysts were immediately able to bring up her file in the archive known as suspected CIA operatives, and whose placement in this file was due to her extensive and advanced educational training at Stanford University in the CIA-funded mind control brainwashing techniques developed by Stanford University psychiatrist Professor Dr. Friedrich T. Melges. Can you say MK Ultra, my friends? MK Ultra. This woman is part of the MK Ultra program, whose primary mission the CIA was to develop new techniques for interrogation and torture, secondary applications going towards the studying the possibilities of exploiting suggestible subjects and getting them to do things, murders, careers that they wouldn't otherwise do, and of which they would have no memory in the case they were caught. Okay. Linked to Dr. Blasey's CVR file. So understand that the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russians had her on file as a known CIA asset. Understand this. And not only just a CIA asset, folks, they're highly involved in MK Ultra and money laundering. Okay. Dr. Blasey's SVR file of known CIA operatives, this report notes, is that of her father, Ralph G. Blasey Jr., a proven CIA operative who from June of 1962 to January of 74 was the vice president of National Savings and Trust of Washington, D.C., a CIA black budget bank known for being 100 paces from the White House, and whom in 1988 was taken over by Sun Trust Bank, and whose majority share owner is the CIA-linked investment bank BlackRock. Can you say George W. Bush? Well, you know what his CIA name was? Black Rose, when we've got into that before. The importance of noting the CIA banking connections with Ralph G. Blasey Jr., this report explains, is due to the outbreak of what is known as the CIA bank war, and who started it in 1982 as the CIA seized from publication news reports, declassified in part by sanitized copy approval for release in 2012. Describes, this is Wall Street, the center of the international banking system, a system on the edge of crisis so severe that the CIA is preparing drastic measures. Something must be done to avert breakdown of the free world's monetary system. Can you say the Bretton Woods Agreement that we've been saying to you for years and years and years on this show? All these wars, all this blood is just to keep the Bretton Woods Agreement afloat. That's what they're talking about. Okay, continue. The main CIA operative involved in this war, and whom Ralph G. Blasey Jr. reported to directly, the report in detail gives, was Nicholas Deek. Nicholas Deek, my friends, is the man, actually, I said James Ingleton was standing. James Ingleton is seated. Nicholas Deek is standing. My apologies for that. Okay. A longtime OSS and CIA operative during and after World War II, who ran the CIA's main black budget operations under direct command of the feared CIA counterintelligence chief, James Ingleton. Okay, let us continue. To how the CIA prevented the total breakdown of the Western banking system in 1982, the detailed report was given details, is illegally laundered hundreds of millions of dollars of Colombian drug cartel cash into it to keep it afloat. In an operation overseen by the CIA's James Bond of money, here we are, Nicholas Deek. But when the President Ronald Reagan administration found out that the CIA had done, and Reagan started investigating it, saw Deek on November 1985, before he was been assassinated in his New York City office by a homeless woman named Lois Lang, who had mysteriously managed, this is a homeless woman, had mysteriously managed to travel thousands of miles across the United States from Seattle, Washington, to conduct the killing in what news reports describe as this at this time. Lang saw him, turned him with the corner with purpose, aiming the pistol with both arms. When she had Deek in her sights, she froze, transfixed, as it was if she had finally found what she was looking for, a witness later testified. Deek seized the pause to lunge and grab Lang's throat with both hands, pressing his body into hers. She'd fired once next to Deek's ear and missed wide before pushing him away just enough to bring the gun into his body and land a shot above his heart. The bullet ricocheted off his collarbone and shredded his organs. Deek crumbled to the floor, and Lang said, "Now you've got yours." A witness later claimed she took out a camera and snapped the photographs of her victim's expiring body. The bag lady, that would be Lois Lang, then grabbed the banker by the legs, dragged him into his office, and shut the door. Though the American people were correctly told that Nicholas Deek, assassin Lois Lang, had previously been under psychiatric care, the report continues, what was failed to be reported to the American people was that Lang had been under direct care and medical supervision of the CIA's own Stanford University professor, Dr. Frederick Melgis, just prior to her traveling from Seattle to New York City to carry out the assassination. And who was the exact type of assassination Dr. Melgis had been working to create in the CIA-funded mind control program MK Ultra, and whose Canadian victims are still being silenced after just recently Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this past December imposed a gag order on them to keep them all silent. But that does apply to Judge Kavanaugh's accuser Christine Blasey, who remains able to teach her CIA undergraduate internship program at Stanford University the MK Ultra mind control techniques discovered by Dr. Melgis. My friends, I can't even not have the time to continue this report. What I am telling you is that her family are deep into MK Ultra, CIA programs, drug money laundering, black operation murders, all of it. This is how deep she goes, and you can tell, my friends, after watching these two documentaries, she was lying through her teeth. My friends, thank you so much for watching our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, manifest kindness to your fellow man, and we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. We thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between